Okay, sixth graders, we're going to start chapter 5 today. And we're going to build on what we learned in chapter 4 about fractions. We're going to start adding and subtracting fractions and mixed numbers. And we're going to start with a lesson about estimating and rounding. Okay? So the first concept we're going to talk about is whether or not a fraction, when it's written, is closer to 0 on a number line, or 1/2 on a number line, or 1 on a number line. Okay? Because we're going to round fractions to either a half or to 0, if it's closest to 0, or to 1. So, first of all, to check to see if a fraction is close to a half. Well, we know that 2 halves make a whole, right? So that means that if you either divide the denominator by 2 and then compare it to the numerator, the top number, or you double the numerator and compare it to the denominator, you can tell to see if they are equal to a half. So, for example, let's say that we take this fraction 1/8. Oh, yeah. Let's say that we take this fraction 1/8. We're trying to decide, is this close to 0, 1/2, or 1? Well, on the number line, 1 out of 8. We can think about that. Okay? What would be half in terms of 8s? What 8s would be half? What number numerator in terms of 8s would give us half? 4 8s. 4 8s would equal half, right? And so if we have 1/8, is that closer to 4 8s or 0? 4 8s. Wait, 4 8s? 1/8?
Oh, wait, no, 0.
0.
I thought you said 4 A's.
Yeah, would it be closer to 4 8s or 0?
Oh, I thought you said 4 A's is 4 A's.
Yeah, 1/8 would be like one right here.
I know, I thought you said 4 A's.
And then 2 8s would be about here. And then 3 8s would be about here. And then 4 8s. Right? So 1/8 would be closest to 0. Right? How about 14/15ths?
1.
Yeah, that would be closest to 1. Because we're almost at the same numerator. Right? 15 out of 15 would equal 1. And so 14 out of 15 is really close to 1. So if we were estimating 1/8 plus 14/15ths, what would we estimate those to? What would we round those to?
0, 1, and it would equal to 1.
Yeah, 0 plus 1 equals 1. So our estimate would be 1. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. How about 7 8s? What would that be closest to? 1. How about 4/5? What would that be closest to? 1. So what if we were doing an estimate of 7 8s minus 4/5? What would our estimate be? What would our estimate be? 7 8s, if we rounded and estimated 7 8s minus 4/5, what would our estimate be?
2.
7/8 minus 4/5. 0, yeah. I knew what you were thinking, you just forgot about minus, okay? Yeah, round them both to 1, they're both closest to 1. And then, estimate 1 minus 1 is 0, okay? Now, how about this? What if we had one like 3/5 and we added 1/6. Three fifths and 1/6. What is this closest to? 3/5. Olivia? Half. Yeah. Do you know what half of 5 is?
2.5.
Yeah, 2.5, which is really close to 3, isn't it? So we would round that to a half. What about 1/6? What is that closest to? Ethne? 0. So if we were estimating 3/5 plus 1/6, what would we estimate it to? Abby?
1/2.
1/2. Yep, 1/2. Okay? So sometimes your answer is 1/2. All right? Let's go to some mixed numbers. When you're using mixed numbers, you either round it to a whole number or a number with a half. Okay? So, let's say that we had a problem like 20 minus 8 1/5 plus 6 4/5. And there's parentheses here, so we have to add these first. And what is 8 1/2 closest to? Well, think about 1/5. Is 1/5 closest to 1/2, 0, or 1? Nate?
0.
0. So that means our best estimate is just 8. Okay? 8 and 0, so just 8. Right? How about 6 4/5? What is 4/5 closest to? Is it closer to 0, to a half, or to 1? 4/5. What's calling you, Jack?
1.
Oh, okay, great. So 6 and 1 is what? What's the best estimate of 6 4/5 then?
61.
7, right. Then add those two, 15, and then do 20 minus 15. Which equals about, so approximately 5. This squiggly equal sign, that's the approximation sign. So it's approximately 5. About 5. Okay? 20 minus 15.
Oh,
Right?
should we write that in our notes?
Yeah, write that in your notes then. Yep. Kate, do you have this already copied?
Yeah, I've been called as all copies.
And the answer? Yeah, the answer too. Yep, follow along. How about 3 1/5? Peter, what would that be closest to?
3.
3, because 1/5 is closest to 0. How about 2 3/4? Abby?
1.
1. So this would round to 3, right? And How about 4 2/3? Peter?
5.
5. Yep. Actually, 4.5 would be fine also. Either 4.5 or 5.
It should be four.
But it's
Okay.
Closer to
25.
5.
It's 25 closer to.
Yeah, it is closer to the whole, if the next whole. All right. But 2/3 is also 0.6 repeating, isn't it? 6/10 repeating. So that's close to a half as well. So this one could round to either one. All right, rounding it to 5 is fine. Rounding it to 5 is fine. 3 plus 3 plus 5 would give us what? 11. So this is approximately 11. Okay. Tyler.
Isn't the actual answer for that one 5?
Yeah. The actual answer for number, the first one is.
Yeah, it's actually 5 for the first one.
Yeah,
What's the real answer then to the other one?
but when we're rounding, we also get 5. Right?
Wait, what's the real answer to the other one then?
Well, what you'd have to do is convert these to a fraction with a common denominator,
And the common denominator.
and then add them all up.
The common denominator is 60.
60.
Because I did that and I got 1017 over 1017 is 60.
Yeah, we're going to be doing that tomorrow. We're going to practice rounding and estimating today. So, go to your assignment page, 140. And do 7 through 24. No, let's see. 7 through 27, sorry. 7 through 27 all.